right, Grandpa, what do we got here?
Okay, here we are, amazingly, in Fish Haven, Idaho, on the shores of Bear Lake. On November 11th, 1988, my dad and mom were up Fish Haven Canyon hunting. They were camping in their tent, and I was coming up to join them. I was in a two-wheel drive Ford pickup, a 1979 Ford pickup truck. Had to put weight in the back. Had some tire chains with just in case. It had snowed about a foot. I had no idea exactly where they were camped, but they just said, keep going up the road till you find us. I kept going and going and going, past the first cattle guard, past the second cattle guard. I saw their tent. When I got there, nobody was in camp. So I went out hunting on my own. I hiked up to the top of a tall mountain and came across the ridge and zigzagged my way back down through a big pine forest. I saw a whole bunch of deer down in the bottom of that patch of pine trees, but I couldn't get a shot at any of the bucks that were there, and they were small bucks at that. I had taken several small bucks in my life, and I had prayed and prayed and literally prayed that I would get a big buck someday. My mom and dad came back to camp about the same time I got back. They showed me a buck that my dad had gotten. He had gotten a nice 4-point buck, I'd say about a 26-inch spread. And I was so amazed that he'd gotten this buck. I was so happy for my dad, but in my heart I wanted one for me. The next morning, we spent the night in the tent. The next morning we got up and went hunting and didn't have much success. We came back to camp, took a nap in the warmth of the tent, and it was time for the evening hunt. We got in my pickup truck and started up to the head of Fish Haven Canyon, just going slow. I saw a 3-point buck, and it was a decent buck, but it wasn't the one I was really wanting. But it was a good buck, and it was bigger than anything I'd ever gotten, so I was going to take it. I stopped the truck. The buck saw me get out, and it took off running, of course. And it crossed the road, went down through a real steep ravine, up through a belt of pine trees, and as it came out the top side, I got a quick shot at it as it was running. I didn't know for sure if I'd hit it or not, so me and my dad went out and we followed its tracks, and we found where I had skimmed some hair off of that buck. There was one little drop of blood about the size of an aspirin. It was that small, and that was the only blood there was. My dad thinks I just barely grazed its brisket from the look of the hair. There's significance in that. We had to get to that spot, and I think I was led to that spot to get this buck, because from there my dad says, well, it's almost dark. He says, I'm going to go around this patch of pines to the west, and I'm going to zigzag real slow towards you. He says, you go and find a game trail through this thick patch of pine trees, and you hunt east to west towards me, but go real slow and keep your eyes open. I found a game trail in the snow. Like I said, there was about a foot of snow, and the deer had just packed a trail like sheep. I mean, it looked like a herd of sheep had been through there. They were migrating out of the high country. Anyway, I'm on this trail, and I could walk silently. I get going to the west. I had gone about, I would say, 300 yards, and all of a sudden I saw some deer run across the trail about 200 yards as far as I could see through the pine tree, crossing the trail that I was on. I watched and watched and watched for a buck, and all of a sudden the last deer that came was this buck right here, and it turned and came on the exact same trail I was on, coming straight towards me. It had no idea I was there. I slowly ducked behind a pine tree off of the trail, and I could see him through the branches of the pine tree coming. And he was coming right on the trail that I was just on. I watched and watched and watched, and here he come, and I knew he was a good one. He was the one I wanted. And I waited, I pointed my gun about as high as I figured he would be. As soon as he passed the pine tree that I was hiding behind, I moved a little bit to give final aim, and he saw me, and he had a look on his face like, oh crap. That deer just knew he was had. I squeezed the trigger. I hit him so hard, I shot right for the neck. That's where I like to hit him, because it puts him down. It hit it so hard that it landed with a thud right on its side, right on the trail, and it was dead instantly. I kai-hooed for my dad. The sound that the Bruderers make in the mountains.
Give us an example.
That sound will travel for miles in the hills. My dad, he knew, one shot, he knew when he heard me kai-hoo, he knew I had gotten a buck. So, I waited and waited, and I was shaking and crying and everything, and my dad came down. First thing we did, I've seen you boys do it too, and you girls. We knelt down, I grabbed the antlers, knelt down in the snow and gave thanks to Heavenly Father for this magnificent animal. So glad to be there with my dad. So proud that I'd gotten a big buck finally. It was an answer to my prayers. I was on cloud nine. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it was so close to dark, we had to finish dressing it out with a flashlight. We drug it down. It was only a short distance downhill up through that same ravine the other deer had ran through, up to the road, and put it in the back of my truck and took it back to my camp. Showed my mom, she couldn't believe it. Now we had two beautiful bucks hanging in the tree. We ate liver and onions for dinner that night. I ate liver and onions for breakfast the next morning because it tasted so good to me. Anyway, thanks for getting this done for me, you guys. I have the antlers still, and this is a replica of those antlers. It looks dead on. I mean, the guy that did this did a wonderful job. I'll remember this forever. Thank you so much. It was a big day in my life. I'll never forget the date that it happened, and it was a good day for me. Thank you, guys.